The Arctic Ocean, a place where silence stretches endlessly, and the waves crash against the ice like slow, frozen thunder. For centuries, sailors have spoken about strange lights, lost signals, and mechanical echoes coming from beneath these waters. But in 2008, something happened that revived one of the darkest legends of the Second World War. A sonar station near Tromsø, Norway, detected a faint, rhythmic ping, repeating every few seconds from deep beneath the Barents Sea. At first, technicians thought it was interference from fishing vessels or underwater cables. But when the signal persisted for hours, they decided to trace its source. The coordinates led to a remote section of the Arctic seabed, the same region where a German U-boat, U-867, had vanished in 1945. U-867 was one of Hitler's advanced submarines, designed for long-range missions across the Atlantic. It was said to carry top-secret cargo, advanced radar jammers, encrypted communication devices, and perhaps something even more mysterious. In official records, it was declared sunk by a light aircraft near Norway, but no wreckage had ever been found. When Norwegian naval researchers received the signal, they couldn't believe it. The pattern matched a distress code used by German submarines during World War II. How could a 63-year-old wreck send out a distress call? The Navy dispatched a research vessel equipped with deep-sea sonar and remotely operated submersibles to investigate. What they found would unsettle everyone on board. At a depth of nearly 900 feet, the sonar showed a large, solid structure lying perfectly upright on the ocean floor. It wasn't broken. It wasn't scattered. It was whole. The submarine was intact, its hull shining faintly beneath layers of ice and silt. And every few hours, that same mechanical ping echoed again through the deep. When the divers went down, they expected to find a rusted relic, something eaten away by decades under salt water. But instead, they found steel that looked preserved, untouched by time. The German insignia was still visible, faint but clear, etched onto the side. The nameplate read U-867. The moment the divers confirmed it, radio communications crackled with excitement, but excitement soon turned to unease. The closer they got, the colder the water became, unnaturally cold, almost as if the submarine itself was radiating a chill. Inside the observation cameras, the divers noticed something else. There was light, a faint glow inside the vessel's observation port, flickering like an electrical pulse. But there were no active power sources at that depth. And when they tried to open the outer hatch, their tools froze, the metal refusing to bend or break. When the team surfaced, the lead diver whispered to his crew that it felt as though the submarine was still alive, like it was watching them. The engineers reviewed their data later that night and discovered that the ping was not random. It carried a pattern, a repeated sequence of numbers, 1, 9, 4, 5. The year it disappeared. Officials dismissed it as coincidence, but one of the sonar analysts, an old marine historian, claimed that U-867 was carrying a prototype communication beacon, meant to transmit encrypted codes even after submersion. No one knew if that was true. The only thing certain was that the submarine was transmitting something, but not in any modern frequency band. The frequency matched those used during the final months of Nazi Germany, when the Reich was desperately sending out final orders. Over the next 48 hours, the research team tried multiple times to re-establish contact with the submarine's signal. But the weather turned violently against them. Ice storms swept through the region, waves towered over the vessel, and radio contact with the surface base was lost for 12 hours. When they finally regained signal and returned to the exact coordinates, the sonar screen showed nothing. The metallic signature of U-867 had vanished completely. The seabed was empty. The crew was silent. Some believed the submarine had shifted deeper into the trench during the storm. Others whispered that it had moved on its own. For the next several weeks, the Norwegian Navy ran multiple sweeps across the area, but found nothing. No wreck, no signal, no trace. The official report was quietly archived. But a few months later, a fisherman near the same region reported picking up faint metallic pings through his sonar, the same pattern repeating again and again. 1, 9, 4, 5. Those who've studied the case believe U-867 is still down there, somewhere beneath the ice, transmitting across time, a ghost machine that refuses to die. Some even say that every decade, when Arctic magnetic storms reach their peak, the signal returns for a few nights before fading again. And so, the mystery remains. What truly happened to U-867? Was it destroyed, as history insists, or is it something else entirely, a relic of war that survived, trapped between death and the deep, forever signaling from the cold silence of the Arctic Sea? When the story of U-867's mysterious signal reached historians, Another secret from the Arctic began to surface, something even larger. In the final months of World War II, as the Soviet army closed in from the east and Allied bombers tore through Germany's cities, the Third Reich launched one of the biggest evacuation efforts in history. It was called Operation Hannibal. From January to May 1945, more than 1,000 ships crossed the frozen Baltic Sea, carrying German soldiers, civilians, and officials escaping the advance of the Red Army. It was chaos. Entire towns were moved overnight. Families crowded onto cargo ships, hospital vessels, even fishing boats, anything that could float. But among the hundreds of ships that sailed into the blizzards, many never made it across. They simply vanished. Some were torpedoed by Soviet submarines. Others struck mines or froze in the ice. But there were whispers that a convoy of special ships, carrying high-ranking officers and confidential research, disappeared without any trace. No survivors, no wreckage, no official record, only silence. For decades, divers and naval experts have searched for what they call the ghost convoy of the Baltic Sea. The legend says that a small group of vessels left Gotenhafen under secret orders, escorted by a destroyer and a submarine. Their mission was to carry documents and technology meant to reach a rumored Nazi base in Norway. But halfway through their route, radio contact was lost. Witnesses from nearby fleets reported a strange light under the sea that night. Blue, circular, and pulsing like a heartbeat. After that, the convoy disappeared. In 2002, a private exploration company scanning for World War II wrecks near Bornholm detected a cluster of metallic shapes deep below the seabed. The sonar images showed vessels that didn't match any known wartime records. They were too close together, almost aligned, like a formation still holding its pattern after all these years. When the team lowered a camera, the feed revealed something chilling. The ships were covered not in rust, but in an almost black substance that absorbed light. The divers called it the Shadow Fleet. They said the water around the wrecks felt thicker, heavier, colder. Compasses malfunctioned, lights flickered, and the sonar showed brief echoes that looked like movement. When they returned to the surface, one diver refused to go back down. He said he heard something inside his headset, a whisper, repeating the same words again and again. Nix Eriksen, do not look back. Officially, these claims were never confirmed. But the company's report vanished from archives within months. Later investigations found that the coordinates had been restricted by the naval authorities. When journalists requested access, they were told the area was part of an unexploded ordnance zone, off-limits to civilians. Still, rumors persisted. Some local fishermen swore they saw shadows beneath their boats when the sea was calm, large shapes moving just beneath the surface, like ships sailing under the waves. Others claimed their radio equipment picked up faint transmissions in German, repeating coded phrases that made no sense. In 2015, a Swedish researcher managed to analyze fragments of one such signal. To his surprise, it matched the frequency used by U-867, the same lost submarine whose signal reappeared near Norway. The researcher proposed an unsettling idea that both the Ghost Convoy and U-867 were part of the same operation, still somehow linked across the decades. He believed the submarine had been fitted with an experimental transmitter designed to coordinate with other vessels using magnetic fields. If that technology survived, even partially, it could still be emitting signals long after its crew perished. But then came the strangest discovery. Satellite imaging revealed faint metallic reflections near the coordinates of the lost convoy, stretching across several kilometers. The pattern looked deliberate, as if the ships had sunk in perfect formation, bow to stern, creating a trail that pointed north, straight toward the region where U-867's signal was last detected. Was this a coincidence? Or had the convoy been following U-867 into the Arctic, carrying out some unknown mission? The question haunted researchers. Every clue led deeper into uncertainty. Every discovery seemed to vanish just as quickly as it appeared. Some claimed that the magnetic storms of the Arctic could reactivate old transmissions. Others whispered that the Nazi engineers had been experimenting with energy systems beyond conventional science. Whatever the truth, one thing became clear. The Baltic Sea was holding onto its secrets tightly. Every attempt to uncover them seemed to invite storms, interference, or failure. The ocean, it seemed, did not want these ghosts disturbed. As night fell over the frigid waters, the sonar buoys continued their quiet vigil, listening for signals that shouldn't exist. And somewhere beneath the waves, faint and rhythmic, the pings continued, pulsing like a heartbeat from another time. The strange transmission detected near the Arctic Circle was faint but distinct, a rhythmic pulse echoing through the static, almost like Morse code but not quite. Naval analysts who studied it confirmed something extraordinary. The frequency matched that of the lost U-867, the same submarine that vanished in 1945. For weeks, the signal persisted, repeating at irregular intervals, always strongest during magnetic storms. Satellite relays picked it up, and even civilian ham radio operators in Norway and Finland began reporting it. They called it the heartbeat of the sea. But here's where it gets darker. When researchers tried to triangulate the source, the coordinates kept changing. The signal wasn't stationary. It moved. At first, they thought it was interference, maybe from drifting buoys or underwater cables. But when naval sensors tracked the pattern over several nights, it began to draw a deliberate path, one that seemed to trace the route of Operation Hannibal's final evacuation line, the same path the Ghost convoy had taken 80 years earlier. Could it be that the signal was somehow replaying the last movements of that lost fleet, repeating them like an echo frozen in time? One evening, a research vessel named Polaris was dispatched to investigate the source. The team on board consisted of scientists, divers, and retired naval officers who had studied World War II archives for years. As they approached the coordinates, the air temperature dropped sharply. Instruments began to glitch. GPS drifted. The crew described a strange pressure in their ears, like descending to deep to fast. And then, out of nowhere, the signal grew louder, so loud that it overpowered the sonar feed entirely. The ship's captain tried to record it, but the equipment malfunctioned. The recording that survived contained only fragments, faint whispers, mechanical clicks, and a word repeated over and over in a distorted German voice: Heimkehr, Heimkehr, homecoming. When they lowered their submersible drone into the dark water, its lights illuminated something below, a metallic surface, smooth and massive, covered in frost and seaweed. At first, they thought it was the seabed. Then the camera tilted, revealing the outline of a hull enormous, ancient, and impossibly intact. The hull markings were faint but visible, a black cross, the remnants of faded German letters, and below them, the number U-867. The crew froze. They had found it, or so they thought. When the drone approached closer, the readings went haywire. Depth sensors flickered between values, showing the sub at 180 meters 1 second and 320 the next. The water pressure readings spiked, then stabilized. And then, for a brief moment, the camera showed something that shouldn't have been there: light. A dim, bluish glow coming from one of the side hatches, pulsing in perfect sync with the mysterious signal. The crew pulled the drone up immediately. When they reviewed the footage later that night, the glowing light was gone. It had vanished from the recording. All that remained was darkness, and the faint echo of the pulse in the background. Word of the discovery spread quietly through naval research circles. But before anyone could confirm the coordinates or attempt a follow-up expedition, the Polaris disappeared from radar. It didn't sink or crash. It simply vanished mid-transmission. For 12 hours, no one could raise them on any channel. When the vessel finally reappeared, drifting 20 miles off its original course, the crew was found in shock. They couldn't explain what had happened. Their clocks showed a time gap of nearly 5 hours. The captain's log recorded only one thing before communication was lost. A single line written hastily in pen: "We saw them. They're still sailing." After that, naval authorities sealed the area again, citing dangerous conditions. The recovered footage was locked under military classification. Only one short clip leaked online, a blurry, low-resolution frame showing a distant shape moving under the water, followed by static. The video went viral under the name Ghost Convoy Returns, sparking endless debates among historians, skeptics, and paranormal researchers. Some said it was fake. Others argued that electromagnetic phenomena in the Arctic could distort time and light, creating illusions. But there were those who believed something far stranger: that the sea itself remembers, that in certain conditions, the past can replay itself, like a recording trapped in water, waiting for someone to listen. By the end of that year, 2 more unexplained sonar echoes appeared along the Baltic Ridge, each matching the same pulse pattern. No official statement was made, but independent divers reported unusual activity: military submarines patrolling, restricted zones, aircraft circling the same coordinates, and radio silence whenever inquiries were made. Whatever the truth behind U-867 and the lost convoy, one fact became impossible to ignore: the signal was not fading. It was getting stronger. As the new year dawned and the polar night swallowed the sea in darkness, the transmissions grew louder, echoing across the frozen waves like a ghostly reminder of a war that refused to die. In the months following the strange transmission, the Baltic became a zone of silence. Civilian vessels were quietly redirected, research missions were delayed, and local fishermen were warned to avoid certain coordinates marked only as restricted for navigation. Officially, it was due to magnetic disturbances and undersea activity. But those who lived along the frozen coastlines of Finland and Sweden began reporting something else entirely. They spoke of strange lights beneath the water, slow-moving shadows that glided silently against the current. Some even claimed to hear distant horns echoing through the fog long after midnight, as if a convoy was passing through the mist, unseen, yet unmistakably there. One witness, a lighthouse keeper on Gotland Island, described seeing what looked like the faint outline of ships, hundreds of them, drifting across the horizon without lights, without sound. He thought it was a trick of the fog until he realized the sea was completely still that night. No wind, no waves, just motionless water, and the ghostly silhouettes moving steadily toward the east. Reports began piling up across the Baltic coast. Radar anomalies, sonar ghosts, and brief moments when the sea temperature would drop several degrees in minutes. The same pattern repeated, a deep hum followed by silence, and then the lights. By spring, a joint Scandinavian expedition was organized in secret to study what they called the Hannibal phenomenon. The lead investigator, Dr. Erik Madsen, had been one of the few people to examine the lost recordings from the Astra Polaris. He believed the phenomenon wasn't supernatural, but environmental, perhaps a kind of electromagnetic replay caused by the wrecks and cold currents. But when he and his team reached the restricted zone, their instruments began failing one by one. The compasses spun in circles. The sonar painted strange shapes that appeared and disappeared. And when they sent a deep-sea drone down again, it captured something unlike anything seen before. Dozens of metallic forms, suspended above the seabed, moving slowly in formation as if carried by invisible currents. The footage showed their shapes clearly: submarines, freighters, and warships. But none of them cast shadows on the ocean floor. They were translucent, shimmering slightly like reflections in glass. When the drone tried to approach, its cameras froze, and the transmission cut out completely. For nearly 20 minutes there was silence. Then, suddenly, the feed returned. But the scene had changed. The fleet was gone. In its place, the water looked empty again, until a faint figure drifted into view. It was a man, or what was left of one, dressed in a tattered German naval uniform. His eyes were open, unblinking, and his lips were moving soundlessly. When the drone's microphones activated, a whisper came through the static, a voice speaking in broken German. It said only one sentence: "We never made it home." After that, the feed collapsed. The drone was never recovered. The incident was buried under layers of classified reports, but word leaked among maritime historians and deep-sea researchers. Some dismissed it as a hoax. Others, however, were convinced the Baltic held something far beyond human explanation. Not ghosts, not ships, but a rift. Dr. Madsen began developing a theory he called temporal residue hypothesis. He proposed that under extreme electromagnetic stress, the sea could retain echoes of catastrophic events, like a memory imprinted in salt and pressure. In the right conditions, these memories could manifest visually, replaying fragments of history. But not everyone agreed. A few of his colleagues suggested something more chilling. What if these weren't echoes of the past, but something trying to return? By the end of the expedition, several members of the crew began experiencing nightmares, recurring visions of drowning men, burning decks, and endless convoys disappearing into the fog. Some refused to return to the sea at all. One diver went missing 2 weeks later. His boat was found adrift near the same coordinates, his dive gear still on board. The only clue was his camera, and a single photo. It showed a long line of ships fading into the mist, their hulls glowing faintly with a cold blue light. The authorities seized the photo, but digital copies began circulating online. Within days, it went viral, reigniting the legend of the ghost convoy. Forums and researchers debated whether it was a deep fake, a mirage, or evidence of something far more mysterious. Meanwhile, local fishermen continued to report odd occurrences. Nets came up scorched or tangled in old, rusted debris that didn't match any known wreck. Some claimed to hear voices when the fog was thick, faint, desperate calls carried across the waves. And then, on the anniversary of Operation Hannibal's final voyage, a storm struck the Baltic, one of the strongest on record. During the chaos, multiple cargo ships reported seeing flashes of light below the waves, like a fleet traveling beneath the surface. The legend of the ghost convoy refused to fade. Even after all official reports were buried, after the data was erased, and after the names of those who saw too much quietly disappeared from public records, the sea itself continued to whisper. Sailors spoke of hearing low rumbles beneath the waves, like distant engines running without end. Ships passing through the northern routes reported strange interference on their radios, Faint voices reciting coordinates from World War II, coordinates that no longer led anywhere. And yet, the Baltic never forgot. It was as if the sea carried the memory of that final winter, when tens of thousands of desperate souls boarded ships to escape the collapsing Reich, hoping for survival, only to vanish beneath ice and fire. Those frozen waters had witnessed pain, fear, and chaos unlike anything seen before. Perhaps, some said, the sea simply remembered what humanity wanted to forget. In 2021, a private research vessel named Aurora Borealis to set sail under a cover of scientific study. In truth, its crew included descendants of German refugees who had disappeared during Operation Hannibal. Their goal was simple: to find closure. For weeks, they mapped the same coordinates marked as restricted by NATO decades earlier. The sonar data was inconsistent, like trying to scan through a mirror that kept shifting. Then, late one night, their radar began to glow with faint signals, hundreds of blips appearing in formation, moving slowly south. The captain ordered all engines to idle. The crew stared in silence as the mist thickened around them. And then, through the dense fog, faint outlines began to emerge. A fleet, not modern ships, but massive, rusted hulks from another century. Their decks were filled with shadowy figures standing perfectly still, their faces pale and indistinct. A soft blue glow pulsed from their hulls as if the ships themselves were breathing. No sound came from the engines. No waves followed their motion. They drifted past the Aurora Borealis to an eerie silence, one by one, stretching far into the horizon. The air smelled faintly of salt and smoke, like an old battlefield frozen in time. One crew member whispered that he saw names on the ships: Wilhelm Gustloff, Goya, Steuben, all vessels known to have sunk during Operation Hannibal. Each one lost with thousands of lives. And now, they were here again, gliding through the fog as if retracing their final journey. Then came the sound, a single horn, long and sorrowful, echoing across the sea. It was followed by hundreds more, forming a mournful symphony that made the entire ship vibrate. Radios crackled, instruments failed, and the compass began spinning uncontrollably. In that moment, the Aurora Borealis wasn't just witnessing history. It was inside it. The fog thickened until the crew could barely see each other. Lights flashed around them, and for a few seconds the sea seemed to glow from below. Shapes, hundreds of them, appeared in the water, faces pressed against the surface, eyes open, mouths moving silently. One of the researchers, unable to look away, began recording with his phone. Through the lens, he saw something the human eye couldn't: the ships, the soldiers, the civilians, all flickering like static, fading in and out of existence. And at the center of it all, a single woman holding a child, standing on the deck of a ghostly ship, staring directly into the camera. She mouthed a single word: "Heim, home." Then, everything went dark. When the fog cleared, the fleet was gone. The sea was calm. But the Aurora Borealis' navigation system showed something impossible. They had drifted over 100 nautical miles without moving an inch. The crew made it back to port shaken and silent. Their footage was confiscated by authorities, but fragments leaked online: grainy videos of ghostly lights, shadowy figures, and the faint echo of horns in the distance. Skeptics called it CGI, believers called it proof. Yet the truth lay somewhere deeper. Historians who examined the leaked files noticed one chilling detail: the ships in the footage weren't decayed wrecks. They appeared as they had been on the night they vanished, pristine and whole. It wasn't a haunting. It was a return. Every few years since, the phenomenon repeats. Always in January, always during the heaviest fog. Mariners report radar echoes of fleets moving across the Baltic, following the same path as the evacuation convoys. Each time, they vanish without a trace. And those who hear the horns say it's not a warning, it's a call. They say the ghost convoy isn't lost. It's trapped in time, forever replaying its final journey through the frozen waters of the Baltic. Every ship, every soul, searching endlessly for a home that no longer exists. To some, it's just a maritime legend. To others, it's the sea's way of remembering. Because in the depths of the Baltic, history doesn't rest. It breathes. And if you ever find yourself sailing those waters, late at night, when the mist rolls in and the compass starts to tremble, listen carefully. You might just hear them, the horns of the lost convoy, echoing through the fog, calling out one last time to find their way home.